let's just dive right in, and I want to start with the first part of the title, which is commodified trauma in commercial video games. So, like everything here, probably the entire everything is a simplification. First things first, memory has been commodified. As Ludovic wrote in the neoliberal social climate, the social memory process is fully dependent on financial resources. In Tirosh and Redding's 2023, The Right to Memory, she expands on our ideas, claiming the false hierarchies of victimhood caused by uneven access to capital. Even empathy is a commodity now, as shown by dark tourism practices, and video games are just another part of the neoliberal capitalist world. It is motivated by profit, but also profit is what drives creativity. And this is my main thesis in this presentation. There should be a balance between the educational goal and the marketability. The second part of my title, my goal, is examining video games as Holocaust memory agents. My main innovation is not looking at the theory and interpretation alone. I use a unique methodology looking at the memory-making process as it is. It's a process. Basically, the end users, in this case the players, are memory agents themselves, and all of the game designers has been end users before. So nothing here exists in a vacuum. There's a positive feedback loop of the memory creation process. Now, why did I choose specifically video games, and why do I think they're good Holocaust memory agents? First things first, it's the only medium that's truly experienced in the first person. Players transition from passive observers to active participants, echoing Holocaust's theory of the era of the user. This deep immersion can also be a catalyst for prosthetic memory, fostering empathy. We also cannot disregard the fact that video games are already extremely popular. Their industry is worth more than movies and music combined. And a lot of people now want to gain something from their hours upon hours of playing, and they want to have more than just fun. And one of the main things that they're already gaining from it is historical knowledge, especially about World War II. Games love the Second World War. It's a great conflict, right? There's a clear distinction between good and evil. We talked yesterday, right? Jeffrey Olin talked about a bit about the cosmopolitan memory or the foundational past. And also, it is very important to say it's so fun to kill Nazis. Right? They're such good antagonists for video games. The problem is that only presenting the war and not the reason why the Nazis are so evil, it's sort of their evilness gets lost. Right? The signified and the signifier are no longer connected. In response, an increasing amount of games depict the actual crimes committed by the Nazis, the examples of which we'll see in a moment. We spoke about why, this is the how, this is the framework through which I analyze my case studies. This is a ludological analysis, meaning it looks mostly at the unique attributes of the games. I drew them from James Polgie's Good Game for Learning. The first thing is pleasantly frustrating. There should be a challenge in order to keep players engaged, and with that, the challenge shouldn't be rating. This is not homework. It shouldn't feel like homework. It shouldn't feel like a chore. So we try to evade textual overload. Another way of keeping engagement is having a connection with the avatar, which of course echoes the prosthetic memory again. And a great way to achieve this connection with the avatar is through agency. Now, agency is a really debated topic both in memory studies and in video game studies. Jérôme de Groot wrote in Consuming History that video games are not a good medium to depict historical events because they already happened. Video games have this inherent agency and inherent interactivity, and we cannot change what already happened. Though to that I would say we all unfortunately live through at least one major global crisis, and we know that at the moment we did have agency. We could, for example, stay at home and wear a mask. The other point of contention is circling back to neoliberalism come from video game studies. In a way, games echo capitalist principle. There is a right and wrong action, and there's a specific algorithm that decides if you win or lose. This could theoretically cause a lack of empathy or even victim blaming. You could say that person could have done this and not that, and they would have survived, right? So there is this sort of case studies deal with this problem of agency in really interesting ways, and none more than Wolfenstein: The New Order from 2014. This was an incredibly commercialized game. It's what's called the AAA, so very high budgeted game. It's also extremely popular. It's one of the top 200 most sold games on Steam, which is a major gaming platform. It's made literally dozens of millions of dollars. It is also a Bethesda game, which is one of the biggest production company on the market, recently bought by Microsoft for $7 billion. So they had many resources both for the development and the marketing of the game. Their main goal was to create the most entertaining game possible. The purpose here, more than anything, is ROI, return on investment, and there was a lot of investment made. The setting, the narrative, is an alternate history in the 1960s after the Nazis won the war. It's mixing sci-fi history in this really interesting way, which we'll talk about in a moment. The game itself is a high-octane, high-action, first-person shooter game. Basically, the main point of the game is shooting a bunch of Nazis. About halfway through the 7-ish hour game, you're being thrown inside a concentration camp. Out of all of the agents you had so far, 3.5 hours of just pew, 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 right, shooting Nazis all over the place, very violent, you're being stripped away from your agency. Your body, your avatar, is just moving along this line without your control. You're being disempowered. You probably know from 10th grade, literature has literary rhetoric devices, right, like metaphors, irony, and so forth. Interactive media has procedural rhetorics, which is what you learn from the interaction itself. Here, this is a mechanic called in video game studies on choice, and it echoes an important principle in Holocaust studies, which is called choiceless choice. The Nazis put their victims in these impossible situations to strip them of their agency, to strip them of their humanity. This is what the game is doing, and it's using a gameplay mechanism to convey the feeling in a way that no other medium can. And it does all that without using words. When I interviewed a game creator, he said he never heard of any of those terms. They just instinctively thought that to create this feeling with the player, they should put them in this extremely helpless situation. But the goal is, and I go to the first sentence, you have to show why the Nazis are worthy of you fighting them. The goal is to keep you in high engagement for another 3.5 hours of play. This screenshot is from inside the camp, and I find it really interesting. So from one hand, we see this mechanical mecha suit that I will give you a spoiler. In the end of the scene, we take control of this mecha suit and we kill all of the guards and we free all of the prisoners, which I don't have to say is complete fiction. But on the other side, we see those chimneys. And we know from the dialogues between the prisoners in the yard, they know that it's human ashes in those chimneys. So there is this constant tension between the reality and the fiction. This echoes another important principle in Holocaust fiction called magical realism. Simplifying it, the more distance we take back, the closer we could get to imagining the unimaginable. Also here, when I asked the creator about it, he said, I don't know any of those French terms. We just wanted to stretch our wings. They wanted to bring something new to World War II games, so they utilized the sci-fi setting. This was a creative solution. It exists to serve the main goal, right? To heighten the experience. The goal wasn't to make an authentic depiction of the Holocaust. The goal was creating a more entertaining and therefore profitable game. Another example of magical realism is My Memory of Us from 2019. As you see from the visual language, it's completely different. It's made for children 10 and up, and it's a sort of puzzle adventure game. It's a Polish indie game, meaning it was independently funded, which on one hand is the epitome of digital democratization. Basically, anyone can create a game now and tell their own story with very few resources. The problem is that anyone could create a game with very few resources. So there's a lot of saturation in the market, and they have to find a way to stand out. Here, in order to do that, they took a game that was meant to be just about friendship and put this Holocaust theme on it. The story is happening in the Warsaw Ghetto, kind of. The problem is that they never mention Warsaw, World War II, or anything historical really. There's not even Nazis. There are a robot king leading a robot army, which raises other questions about magical realism, specifically about the depiction of the banality of evil. Right? There were robots. This was also noticed by the reviewers, by the commenters. These weren't mindless, heartless machines. They were real. The Nazi soldiers were humans. It's also worth mentioning they don't speak about the Jews. It's the red folks, which of course is a reference to Schindler's List, which both the creator confirmed and also the reviewers noticed. Many reviewers mentioned Schindler's List by name. They use a lot of Holocaust iconography in general. This is another great example, a direct quote of one of Morris Ghetto's most iconic images, of course. So from one hand, they are knowingly connecting the story or the visuals to Holocaust imagery, but at the same time, they are also knowingly trying to universalize the message by not saying the word Jewish explicitly. The problem with that is that the end user could be oblivious to that. This is still obscure enough so that the player would self-describe himself as taken an embarrassing amount of time to realize what it's supposed to be referencing. Throughout the game, you can find these memories. It's a game mechanism called collectibles, and they are the only real connection to history. There are a couple of problems with that. First, you have to search for them. They're not really readily available in the game. And the second thing is that it forces you to read. Right? We talked about how you shouldn't put too much textual overload. Except for the cutscenes that are wonderfully created by Sir Patrick Stewart, the game has no natural language, only a visual one. And here, basically, every memory opens a slot in the memory gallery, and there's a sort of small Wikipedia article about what the historical context is. The problem is it was an afterthought in the creation process, and it really shows. Here they're saying if you want historical context, you have to read. In Holocaust education, we say you need to teach both about the Holocaust and from it. Meaning you need to teach both the facts and the lesson. And while they successfully convey the theme of friendship and love thy neighbor, the facts are just an afterthought. The Holocaust here was used as a marketing tool, as a way to stand out. And my last case study is different in every single way from everything we've seen so far. This is the only game that was specifically made by a non-profit to be an educational game. And it was released for free on all major platforms. Luc Belnat, the creator, he's sort of an auteur. We say that about the Odyssey now, right? A buzzword. But he wanted to create this game for at least a decade. And he personally raised the funds by his account over $500,000 to create it. As by his words, Holocaust education has failed. This game blurs the lines between truth and fiction. From the one hand, it's telling the story of a fictional family in Vichy France, but on the other hand, it uses a lot of historical facts. There are a lot of real historical documents inside the game, and in the end of every scene, there's a slide that gives you all of the facts of what we just saw. It is mainly dialogue-based. I counted 6 times where you have dialogue options, but none affect the storyline. Belnat did this on purpose, subverting the previously discussed capitalist principles of winning and losing. He says, I didn't want to make a game where you could have a chance to survive, because then people would be trying to win that game, and this isn't something to win. So instead of giving the agency and just taking it away, he avoids giving it in the first place. Once every couple of scenes, there's a mini game, like here where you bestow the yellow star on the shirt, but that's about it. And even the reviewer said here that it was superfluous, meaning unnecessary. In the rest of the comment, they go on to say that it would have been better as an interactive story, as the games don't add anything. And I tend to agree. So the game is almost completely dialogue-based. There's no voiceover, so no evading textual overload, and we've done in 30 seconds. The game doesn't have dialogue options, there are no challenges, the avatar changes every scene, so it doesn't feed the criteria of a good game for learning, or as this player wrote, really boring, just walking to places, but they tell well about the lives of the Jews in the Second World War, the devastating persons, in the original text. I recently spoke with Luc Belnat again, and they are releasing a new version that corrects a lot of my criticism, but my point here still stands. It's an important example because this is the one game that was directed towards Holocaust education with no monetary gain. but this causes a boomerang effect. The more we want to educate, the more we sort of repel the people. My point here is that there should be a balance between marketability and education, and that a game needs to be good in order to be a good game for learning. Okay, thank you so much.